Thanks so much. Thanks for letting me be here. Muito obrigado for those of us who are learning our Portuguese very slowly here as immigrants. I'm going to talk about money because it turns out that money is of real interest to a lot of your stakeholders and your executives. But I'm going to tell a little story first, I think. So let's go there. There we are. Okay. So let me tell you about this person, and you may know him. I don't know if anybody's been at a party or a social event or a work thing where there's somebody who's really, really excited and intent about telling you something that he's really, really interested in that you don't care about, right? He's a golf fan, and you're going to hear 25 minutes about American golf courses versus Scottish golf courses and who gets to wear the green jacket. He's a Dungeons and Dragons fan, and if you think that orcs and elves are different, well, he's your thing, right? Political conspiracist, whatever it is. You know, here in Lisbon, it's Benfica versus Sporting, whatever it is. He's somebody who's really, really intent on giving you a detailed lecture about something he loves that you couldn't give a rat's about, right? Why do I have this person up here? Because most of us, as product folks, when we're talking to the go-to-market side of our companies, sales, marketing, finance, operations, we really hope and dream and want them to love all of the details of what we do. And I have some bad news for you. They couldn't care, right? So we don't want to be this guy or this gal who spends our time lecturing all the other folks in the company about what we do and how important we are and how smart we are. Because at best, we're wasting their time, and at worst, we're frustrating them because we're not dealing with the thing they want, right? So I had just a couple of phrases here that we use all the time, and when we use them all the time with our engineers and designers and maker teams, they make perfect sense and they're really useful. But when we use them with our go-to-market execs, steam comes out of their ears, right? I don't know if you've ever heard any of these. How about, there's no slack in the engineering plan, our priorities are set. Thank you for that really, really good suggestion. Drop dead, right? We're telling the truth, but what is it that our go-to-market execs and friends hear? We don't care. Their needs are not important. There's no input. Whatever the process is, it's broken. Thanks for sharing, right? How about another one? We've all said this, right? I'm an enterprise guy. The sales team always brings me a Post-it that says, we just got a call from HSBC, and they told us if we could add teleportation to the product by Friday, they'd give us a contract for 7 million euros, whatever it is, right? And the first thing we say is, well, that little Post-it's really interesting, but we don't understand it. It's incomplete. We've got to go send some people out and do discovery and send the architect out, right? And that's often true, but what is it that our friends on the sales side hear? They hear that we think they're dumb and they didn't ask any of the right questions. By the way, they ask a whole different set of questions and they have a different job. And that we're going to start from scratch. And by the way, they're never going to get what they want. Right? How about one more? Anybody do this? Anybody have a system in their company where people can fill out a form and request a feature? Raise your hand if you have that system. Okay? Keep your hand up in the air if there's any chance that more than 20% of those really get looked at and worked on and done. Okay, a couple. You get a prize here. Come back to me later for a book. For the most part, these are systems where we've put up a little barrier and we force people to fill out forms. And in general, either nobody looks at it or nobody takes it seriously, and they're never going to get the thing they asked for. So why did they fill out their form? I don't know, but we asked them to, right? So these are all things that on the inside, and the inside baseball of the product development process, make perfect sense with our little cohort. But when we share them this way with the folks who are not interested in how the food is made in the kitchen, they just want the dinner served in the restaurant, they get very frustrated. So another way to say that is I coach all of my CEOs, which is what I'm doing, CPOs these days, which is what I'm doing. When we talk about generic product and engineering processes with the folks who don't care about generic product and engineering processes, it sounds like excuses. And to a large extent, because I talk to a lot of CEOs, a fair number of them believe that product management is one of the reasons things don't get done, right? And that our job is to slow down the system and not give them what they want. And if they could just wire up the CRM that has that post-it note request to the AI system that's going to auto-generate the code, we could get rid of all the product folks and engineering folks, and we'd all be happier. That's all true, except that we'd all be happier because it'd be a huge mess. But when we talk, my perception is that when we talk to our execs on the go-to-market side about how things get done, at best they ignore us, and at worst they're really, really frustrated. Okay, we're going to need an alternative at some point, right? Okay, let's keep going. So what do they care about? Right. By the way, all of us understand that before we build a product, we should probably interview the users to find out what they care about, right? We're going to do the same little experiment with go-to-market execs. No surprises here. You guys all know the answers. What's the number one thing go-to-market execs care about? Sales and marketing. Current quarter revenue. Because, by the way, what happens to a salesperson who doesn't hit their revenue target this quarter? Correct, they're fired, right? Okay, so if we promise to get 16.5 million in this quarter, there's a lot of pressure to get 16.5 in this quarter, right? And whatever commitments we made, whatever promises we made, even if they made no sense at the time, we've got to live up to them, right? What they care about. And in the B2B enterprise space, which for me is, let's say, average tickets of 50 or 100,000 and up, right? Big ticket items. There's usually just a handful of big deals. Anybody at a company with a handful of big deals, right? And of course, the sales VP knows the names of these handful of big deals, and the CEO knows the names of the handful of these big deals. But everyone on your board of directors knows the names of these handful of 5 or 6 big deals. And because they're polite, each of them only calls your CEO once a week to ask how every single one of those deals is doing. So there's tremendous pressure through the rest of the organization to close these deals. Now, I'm sure it's never happened for any of your companies, but occasionally in the companies I've been at, those prospects raise some little tiny request or requirement in the very last minute, which isn't small and isn't tiny, right? And the sales team gets the last minute thing that says, hey, we need you to insert a thing, right? And there's 2 ways this can go. They come to me as the head of product, and they ask for it, and I say no. And so they escalate to the CEO, who says yes. Or, saving some time, they skip talking to me, and they go right to the CEO, who says yes. So in the B2B enterprise space, there's always a bunch of interrupts coming in on the big deals, many of which make no sense or aren't useful. But if we observe the pattern, we know this happens over and over again, right? So big deals, right? These are the 2 things that most of our executives really care about every day. What do they not care about so much? How about how stuff gets done on the inside of engineering and product? It's really complicated. You know, the engineers are actually pretty lazy, and they're mostly playing Fortnite and eating bonbons, right? And the product folks are busy talking about frameworks. By the way, the phrase product operating model is one I never, ever, ever, ever use with any go-to-market executive for any reason, because what it sounds like to them is, we think we're the smart kids, we get to make all the decisions, and you folks in sales and marketing get no input. That's what they hear from that phrase, okay? So when I'm coaching CTOs and CPOs, we agree we're never going to use those words outside of our little offices, okay? Nobody cares about product process outside of our little bubble of makers and product and engineering and design. So we need to have a different language when we're talking to the folks outside than the folks inside, right? Should be obvious, turns out not to be, right? So here's my phrase. You guys know this? Don't bring a backlog to a gunfight, right? If you've been in the executive meeting where everyone else is talking about current quarter revenue and next year's revenue, and by the way, it's all denominated in currency, and you're there to talk about architecture and purity of design and what users might love, you're bringing a backlog to a gunfight. Not a winning strategy. Thank you for joining. We don't need you at the next meeting, right? So as a product leader, you need to understand how the language you use lands, and you need to have an alternate set of language when you're trying to get something done with the people who really don't care what we love and desperately do every day, which is discovery and managing what we're doing, and we've got these rice charts for how to do backlogs, right? Doesn't matter. Okay, let's keep going, right? So I'm going to introduce something I call money stories. Notice these are not user stories. We're actually not going to talk about tech or users at all, but they go to the same place in the cycle, which is before we commit a whole bunch of engineering to something, before we put it on the roadmap, before we make a bunch of promises, we should be able to tell a very short story about what it's worth, and it must include a currency symbol, right? And here's the rules. Why we should care has to be about money, because the folks on the other side of the aisle who are going to give us permission to do this, and budgets and people and hiring and staff, care about money. Swag, somebody translate swag for me? Anybody? Oh gosh, we're still in Europe, aren't we? Scientific wild-ass guess. We're going to throw some darts, we're going to pick some numbers. It's not going to be accurate, but it's going to be close enough that we can have a discussion, because if it's something that's going to take us a year to build, we don't know how big it is, but I bet we know whether it's this big or this big, right? So we're going to do a few of these. And then the other rule, because we're dealing with execs, it's got to be simple, right? So no more than 3 numbers. The only operator is multiply. And 2 of the 3 numbers you already know, and the other one we're going to imagine, make up, or grab from some data. Everybody with me? Okay, so let's do a few of these. By the way, they're all the same. And they're all simple from your point of view, except for the guess. So let's tell some stories, and then let's turn them into money stories, right? Here's the upsell story. And I'll tell the story, and then you guys are going to raise your hand if you've told this story in the last few months. There's this we have a product, and let's say it's in a tiered subscription model, right? Good, better, best, bronze, silver, gold. I think I chose basic and premium here, right? And we're going to tell the story that says, if we add this really cool feature, and notice for a moment, I don't care what it is, right? If we add this really cool feature, it's going to get a bunch of the folks who are paying our basic subscription to be so excited that they're going to upsell themselves, and they're going to buy a more expensive subscription for the premium version of the product, right? Have we all told this story? Anybody told this story? Okay, right? What are we missing from the story? Don't think too hard. Sorry? Dollar value. We're missing the thing that our audience cares about if they're going to say that it's okay to push a bunch of other things out of the roadmap so we can do this, right? We're missing the money. And by our rules, the maths have to be easy, so here's the very simple maths, and then we'll do one. Are we? There we go. Okay. How many basic customers do we have? And by the way, you can look that up because you know. And what does it cost to go from the basic to the premium? And you guys know that. You can look that up. And then we're going to take a wild guess for what portion of our basic customers we think might pay us extra money to do this. Now, maybe you have some data and maybe you don't, but my contention is you can get within a factor about 3 or 4 in less than 5 minutes, right? Not so hard. And we're making it simple because it's going to be for executives, and you can figure out your own thing there. So let's do one, right? Our particular thing, we got 30,000 customers. It costs us we get 90 euros a year to upgrade. Big guess here, we're hoping maybe based on some history and some guesses and some analysis that we might get 1 to 4% of those folks to pay us more, right? This is an upsell story. Multiply, 25 to 100K a year. There we go. Notice there's money at the end. Is this a lot of money? I don't know. Okay? At your company, it might be, it might not be. But notice we suddenly have something we can compare to other things that the executives are asking us to do that might or might not make any sense. And we might have a whole bunch of other things that people are suggesting for upsell. And with almost the same math, we might be able to guess which of these are worth really investigating and doing design and sizing on, because some of them are going to be way smaller, and some of them are going to be way bigger. Notice, within a factor of 5, within a factor of 10, right? Conceptually, what we're doing is we're looking out into the future, and we're trying to guess in monetary terms what it might be worth if we do it. And we want to do that before we spend all the engineering, before we size it, before we put it on the roadmap, right? Money stories. Okay, let's do a couple more, all of which are the same, right? There's a new market, right? We're an American software company, and we forgot all about languages and GDPR and privacy and a bunch of other things, but we'd like to open up the European market. If we would just pour those things in the top, it would all be better. We're going to add these features, whatever they are, and it's going to open up a whole new market, whatever that is. Notice I'm ignoring the tech on purpose, which we all love and we all want to talk about, right? Okay, what are the basic maths, right? Okay, so how many prospects are there in the sample, in the segment? And what do we get every year if they say yes? And what's our wild guess for how many we get in year one, right? By the way, this now becomes a negotiating point with sales before we commit to do the work. Because if sales tells us that they don't think there's very many customers, we probably shouldn't build it. And if sales tells us there's an awful lot of customers, we really want to encourage them to put that into their commission plan and sign up ahead of time before we deliver it and it turns out to be a bust, right? Okay, let's just do the maths. They're all the same. For whatever reason in this market, there's 250,000 potential buyers. I don't know why. We think we can get $500 a year from them. And our wild guess is, for magic reasons, we think we might get 2 to 6% of them. And we multiply. Is 2.2 to 8 million a lot? I don't know. But we could now vaguely compare this to the other 15 things that came out of marketing and sales this morning and figure out that we'd only like to spend energy on the few that look big, right? Maybe they are big, right? For a lot of companies, 2 to 8 million would be a lot. For some, it would be a little. I don't know. But it gives us a place to compare things that are coming from the outside world in the language and units that our audience here cares about. Let's do one more. They're all the same, right? Support costs. Anybody ever heard this? If we just fix that UI problem, if the workflow just worked better, if the sign-up sheet, whatever, right? If you guys would just do this fix that came from support, we'd save all this time. Okay, that's great. It's not a full sentence until it has a currency symbol in it, right? So, basic maths, right? Okay, how many tickets do we get? And what does it cost us to service a ticket? And what's our wild guess for how many of those tickets go away if we fix this thing, right? By the way, this is how we should engage with our support organization, because we would really like to fix the bugs and the problems that are going to free up the most support time. But we get them one at a time. Every single support person comes to us and says, my last call was the most important one, right? Stack depth of 1, we're moving on. But if we go back to the support leadership and say, you guys have to help us rank the things we're going to fix, we'll fix the easy ones first. I need a mic? Okay. Okay. Sorry. Too energetic. All right, you can still hear me? No, we're going to take this. Can you hear me now? Okay, sorry. I get very energetic with this, right? So this is a good way to discuss, to talk about value with our support friends before we go and fix the bugs that turned out not to be the important ones. Yeah, we have to size things, and we'll do the easy ones first, but let's talk about value, right? Do the maths, right? We're getting 600 tickets a month. It costs us 60 pounds of time for the people to fix it. We're wild guessing that a quarter to a half of the tickets get fixed if we do this thing. Okay. I don't know if 80K to 220K is a lot, but it gives us a place to have a conversation that's not about which of the engineers are fussy about which pieces of code they want to fix, or who's taller than who, or who's wearing a nice outfit, or I don't like you, right? Money stories turn out to be really useful because they give us a basis of conversation before we sign up for the work on our best guess. And I would tell you that with just an hour or two of training, every one of you can estimate one of these things in 3 minutes or less and decide which 90% of them aren't worth spending any more energy on because you have other things to do, right? Okay, let's keep going. So I call this counting the digits. Notice it doesn't matter what the leading number is, 200,000 or 300,000 or 900, we don't know, but I contend that every one of you knows the difference between a 4-digit idea, a few thousand a year, and a 6-digit idea, a few 100,000 a year, and an 8-digit idea, a few tens of millions a year, and you can see that at 10 paces in 3 minutes, right? And yes, things take different amounts of energy or effort, but before we go to our engineering team and ask them to size 900 things, 840 of which we're never going to do, right? We can do a quick sort on similar things and guess how many digits they have. Is this obvious? Yeah, but none of us are doing it, right? This is the money story that goes to the front of the parade instead of the we forgot to have metrics for success at the end of the parade after we shipped our thing, right? Ready to keep going? All right, good. So I want to frame this as a change in conversation. And again, I'm thinking in the executive level between the chief product officer and the chief engineer right next to them with the revenue folks across the table. Let's imagine that we all agreed that we're going to build this new platform. Anybody have a new platform they're building, right? And it's going to enable all these new products and money next year. By the way, all platforms are estimated at 1 year and take 3 years, right? It's just like the visa process here in Portugal. Anyway, and we're surprised every single week when the sales team lobs something in. They say, hey, this big customer needs this thing. It's really exciting. It's really important. And it won't take very much time. It's probably only 5 lines of code, right? You can slip, you're agile, you can slip it into next week's sprint, right? We've all been there. We need you to do this thing, right? Product, you need to agree. Engineering, you need to start on it this week. And we bring to that executive meeting this sort of limp, unexcited, passive, defensive thing. And we say something like this. Yeah, but if we pull the platform team off of what they're doing to do your new special thing, the platform's going to be a quarter late, right? There's this thing I call roadmap amnesia, which is the feature that none of your go-to-market executive team can ever remember why anything's on your roadmap or what it's worth, no matter how many times you tell them, because they're doing other jobs and they're not really interested, right? So this is not a very powerful way to win an argument that we should finish something. It sounds like an excuse. So let's just add the money, right? So here's the other form of the conversation. We've agreed, remember when we did this thing at the very beginning, we had some idea of what it was worth before we greenlighted it. We've all agreed that the new platform's going to put something between 10 and 25 million on the top line because it enables all these products next year, right? We're in the language of money. So I work for you, CEO. But if we're going to delay this by a quarter, my stupid math here, because I'm just a product manager, tells me I think we're going to leave 3 to 6 million on the floor. So I really hope that the thing you want to interrupt the platform team is worth as much as 3 to 6 million, because otherwise we're postponing your retirement to Fiji for a year because the IPO doesn't happen so soon, right? The language of money is understanding what motivates our audience, right? So notice that this is a very powerful way to say, we've all agreed this is useful. You've all forgotten because it's not what you worry about. But there's a real cost, and costs are not in terms of time of delay or, architecture. They're dollars or whatever unit of currency you're in. So I'm perfectly willing to throw 3 to 6 million on the floor for this. By the way, it might be the whole thing if we're going to be late to market. But I really need somebody else to step up and say that this really new thing from this really big customer is going to net the customer, net us something of similar value, right? The language of money. We're no longer bringing backlogs to the gunfight here. We're talking in the language of conversation. We good? Right? And we must have had this discussion before today. We must have had some agreement as to what this is worth before the issue came up. We can't just spring this at the last minute. So it's important that we have this discussion before we sign up for 11 teams for 4 years and 22 million euros of development for our new platform, because it's too late once we're underway. Okay, let's wrap. All right, takeaways. When we're talking with execs on the go-to-market side, I really recommend we talk about money and outcomes, not how we're building the stuff, not the process. They don't care, right? Order of magnitude's good enough. By the way, they're all making up these numbers as well. They don't tell us that. Okay, nobody knows what's going to happen next year, but they're all very certain to 6 decimal places that they're going to give you an answer, right? I always do a range because it's easier. And then we want to present or choices that are really clear, which is, here's what I'm going to cancel. I can give you the thing you want. Let me tell you what I'm taking out of the plan, and how much it's going to hurt because maybe you really don't want what you asked for, right? Hard choices. Good. We're done here. That's me. Obrigado. Go forth.